What I got for you today is something that I have never uploaded to YouTube before. This is not going to be a best of 3 series. This is not going to be a best of 5 either, but this is going to be a best of 7 between 2 professional gamers in StarCraft 2. Now, of course, I do upload near daily StarCraft 2 content as it is, but I have no idea how many of you are interested in these longer casts as well. So if you got any feedback for me, let me know down below the subscribe button in the comment section of the video, because I would love to read your feedback. Regardless though, today, if you don't already have yourself a drink, I would highly recommend you go ahead and get yourself one right now, because we should be in for a treat. This is going to be a best of 7 between a professional Zerg and a Terran, some of the very best players on the planet. Spawning here in game number 1 in the top right corner of the map, playing with the blue drones, we have none other than Serral and his opponent spawning in the cross position, or actually, no, in the horizontal position, spawning in the top left corner of the map, playing with the red Terran SCVs. He goes by the nickname of Gumiho. Now, of course, both Gumiho and Serral are absolutely incredible. Gumiho ended up winning a GSL Code S, essentially the highest level tournament on the planet, just a couple of months ago, and this guy is on an absolute tear in 2017 so far. Now, Serral may be a little bit less, well known as his opponent is in this particular series, but the guy is an absolute monster. Right about a year or so ago is when Serral first really became known, at the very least to me. He's been around for quite a bit longer than that, but he hasn't really shown any insane results since then. But the thing is that Serral is widely considered by a lot of the non-Koreans and Korean pro gamers alike. He is widely considered to be one of the top level Zergs on the planet. And while of course he is indeed going to be from Finland, and he doesn't really participate in a lot of the Korean tournaments, it's always hard to judge exactly how he will go up against some of the best players on the planet, like, for example, Gumiho. Now, both Gumiho and Serral are indeed qualified for the BlizzCon Grand Finals, which will take place in Anaheim in just a couple of weeks from now, which is essentially where, the World Championship Series Grand Finals will take place. So that does mean that we will finally know who is going to be the World Champion of the year. But both Serral and Gumiho are qualified, so I'm really curious what the end result of this best of 7 series will be as well, because this should be a super high level match. Now, as you may have already noticed, we're on a bit of a weird map. This map is called Neo-Tropicana, and its entire series, this entire best of 7 series, was indeed played as part of the Team Liquid map contest, the TLMC, as you can see right there, right below the timer as well in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. The TLMC is essentially a map contest where the winners, so that doesn't necessarily mean like the winners of the tournament itself, but usually the winners of the maps, as judged by a lot of the pro gamers as well as the viewers and whatnot. The winners of the TLMC, so the best maps of that tournament, are usually gonna appear as well in the next ladder season of StarCraft 2, which is a very big deal. Now here we go, first little bit of action in this game. Serral is going to try and get a scout in there, not quite going to be able to do so. Reaper, however, is hanging back for just a second, and it does look like indeed one of the SCVs will end up dying, and will the Zerg can get on out of there? It does look like that will be the case as well. But we are going to be watching this entire series on a bit of a funny map pool, a map pool that I have personally not really seen myself yet either. I have checked out most of the maps just to get a basic understanding of it. I've played one game on Neo-Tropicana, but there are indeed some cool aspects in a lot of these maps, such as, for example, the fact that the rocks right here are covering a watchtower. This is a concept that we haven't really seen before in StarCraft 2, but in order to take control of this area, you need to knock down the rocks first, essentially opening up new attack paths as well. It's a really fun little concept, and a lot of these maps are indeed featuring some weird playstyles that we haven't quite seen before in StarCraft 2 just yet. So we should be in for a treat. Anyways, let's jump into it. Of course, both players here are indeed building up a pretty standard composition. Gumiho, he's very well known for his mech style as of late, but he's perfectly capable of playing bio as well, so an army composition based around the marine and the medevac. It does look like that is going to be the case. Beautiful timing there, actually, knowing precisely when the Overlord would be moving in. But at this point, just by simply seeing the amount of marines, I think that Serral knows fully well what he's going up against, and actually another Overlord right there poking in and indeed confirming that it's going to be the double medevac medevac drop with 16 Marines. That usually hits right around the 5-minute or so mark in StarCraft 2. So there we go. He's going to wait for these last 3 Marines to finish up as well. And now the medevacs will be able to start traveling to the other side of the map. But now we are spawning in horizontal positions. That does mean that these dropships will arrive rather early on into this game. But it does look like Serral is already prepared, you know, for this push. He's actually already positioning the Zerglings now inside of the main base. So he should be able to pick this up rather easily. And there we go. He's immediately on top of it. And Gumiho is giving him the respect that he deserves. And he immediately jumps on out of there as well. Early game ZVT can be a little bit silly. Both players are essentially forcing each other to start making units. And then, you know, since they both have units, they don't really want to fight. So usually these kind of forces will mostly be meant as a way of cleaning up the creep spreads. Now, Queens are now also ready to go ahead and shoo away these medevacs here. Beautiful target firing so far, forcing the pickup once again. And while we will see a little bit of drop micro here back and forth, I highly doubt that there's going to really be any kind of crucial damage that will get dealt. Gumiho does have to be careful, though. He's not going to be capable of keeping all of these units alive. And indeed, a slight little advantage there going to the blue Zerg player here in game number 1. But really, it's not going to be all that important just yet. This will all come down to the middle stages of the game, because both players are just simply building up a very large force. Third command center just about to finish up here for Gumiho. Serral already happily mining off of his third hatchery, however. So while he was forced to make a lot of Zerglings, he's been capable of building up that unit composition as well. And I wonder what unit he will be choosing. A lot of Zerg players lately are indeed no longer opting for the Mutalisk style. And while the Mutalisk didn't necessarily get nerfed, the Hydralisk style, so the Hydraling Bane composition, has become a lot more popular recently in particular. Now, I'm assuming, by the way, that Gumiho is going to be taking this high ground here as his third base location. Let's have a quick look. Should be something that he can quite easily secure. Of course, that does mean that he's expanding towards the Zerg opponent. So I really wonder how he's planning on you know, continuing the macro here in this particular game. Queens, however, already pushing a lot of creep out on this map. Fourth base already being taken here by Serral. And while he doesn't quite like to, you know, play this spawn location here, it does look like he's just simply going to take the entire right-hand side of the map to make sure that he knows exactly what's up. Now, so far, Serral does not precisely know where these medevacs went, but he indeed does have the star sense to tell that they're going to be located very nearby. And once again, it does look like he will be able to deal with these medevacs just fine. Beautiful target firing, though, so far, picking up a couple of these Baneling kills and then lifting up all of the Marines once again to get on out of there and, you know, heal them up very shortly here once these medevacs do, you know, finish unloading. There we go. They're going to be able to heal up these units once more. Heal up that stim pack. And in the meantime, the third base was indeed secured here by the Terran player. Once again, trying to target fire here to the best of his abilities, but so far, really impressed here with Serral's defense. Not really missing a beat just yet. Target firing down those medevacs with the Queens, and now that the Banelings are coming in, these Marines have nowhere to go, and it does indeed look like Serral will be able to slowly squeeze out more and more advantages. Hydralisk now also in production here in the main of the Zerg player. The Liberator is coming in, but it does not get any damage done whatsoever, and on top of that, the creep spread has really not been halted whatsoever. Look at that. The creep spread is already super far out into this match, just 8 minutes into it. Serral really showing what he is capable of, and Gumiho so far is definitely playing from behind. Now, interestingly enough, even though he's lost quite a couple of units, look at those supply counts, right? Gumiho is definitely still very much so into it. Usually, as a Terran player here, you do want to be, you know, a little bit behind, because that's sort of standard, but he's almost even here with the Zerg player, which, you know, it's very impressive here as far as the macro style goes in this series so far. Very passive play, though, from Serral at this point. I mean, he's just simply tacking up towards the hive, getting himself those double evolution chamber upgrades as well, and he's making sure that he's going to be capable of defending anything. And I think that it may very well be a game where the Zerg player is going to try and build up, you know, to a maxed out army composition based around the Ultralisk and maybe some Corruptors and whatnot as well. Medevacs once again moving across the map. They're going to try and see if they can potentially deal some damage right now. Now that Zergling there, very important scout, and immediately Zerglings, Hydras, and Banelings are making their way towards the fourth base location, whereas the other part of the army is just simply going to hang out closer towards the main base to pick up any kind of dropships. And look at this, you know, spread here between the armies, right? So once again, there's going to be a little bit of a skirmish over here, but at the same time, the Hydras and the Banes are trying to engage these double medevacs, and they are not achieving anything. It's the medevac, that is, right? They're not doing any damage whatsoever. And Serral, so far, absolutely shutting down every bit of aggression. And as you think about it right now, what exactly is Gumiho gonna assume at this point in the game? Indeed, he is gonna start producing 2 Liberators at once. That's very important for him, because if he does not go ahead and do so, and these Ultralisks catch him off guard, and the Ultra Cavern is currently on the production tab as well, that does mean that Serral is just simply gonna be able to overwhelm his opponent. Now, I wonder if that's still not just simply gonna be the case. Serral is indeed getting a ton of upgrades here, so he's gonna be a little bit behind here as far as the, you know, supply counts go, but very shortly, he's gonna be capable of producing a ton of Ultras. I really like this timing here, though, from Gumiho. If he decides to push across the map right now, and even though 3-3 is not quite done just yet, I think it's going to be a good moment, because he doesn't want to quite wait until the Ultralisks are out. Also, very offensive aggression here by the Terran player. He's going to try and expand very close towards the Zerg, but here we go. Zerg is going to try and move forward, picking up a couple of those units, triggering a few of the Widow Mines as well, but now with an Infestor in the middle of this composition, I wonder exactly what he's got in store right now. Is he going to hit that fungal growth? Not quite doing so just yet, and it does look like for the moment at the very least the Zerg will be forced back, but here we go. Beautiful fungal growth, halting a lot of those units from proceeding onwards. But is there enough Zerg, however, left over to clean all of that up? Ultralisks are indeed coming out right now, 2 at once as well. Adrenal Glands is just about to finish up. However, the Planetary Fortress is now also done morphing, meaning that Gumiho is gonna be able to sit nice and pretty here at this 4th base location, very close to the Zerg's main supply count. And that is really where you want to be as a Terran player. Although, once again, though, the Infestor is gonna try and set up this surround here, and this is gonna get awkward really fast, because if this does not get scouted and the fungal growth gets hit, there we go. Once again, the Zerg is gonna be able to advance onwards. Liberators are indeed being shut down now by all of these Hydralisks. Ultras are trying to do whatever damage they can, but they are currently engaging a Planetary Fortress, and I wonder if that is going to be something that you really want to do as a Terran player or as a Zerg player right now, because that is going to be able to pick up a ton of kills. These SCVs are going to be able to keep that Planetary Fortress alive for an extended period of time, but really still no detection available here just yet. Once again, beautiful fungal growth moving forward right there, picking up a big amount of those Marines. Queens are now also engaging in this composition, using their transfuses to get as much damage done as they possibly can, but so far, the Terran player is holding on. Serral is indeed trying his very best to produce as much as he can, still forced to split up army because he doesn't know if there are any medevacs traveling across the map, and I think that here in game number 1, we're gonna have to wait a little bit longer to see exactly who's gonna end up obtaining that victory. And finally, Gumiho is indeed gonna construct himself a missile turret, but hold that thought though, because now that Vipers are out, there can indeed be both blinding clouds as well as a lot of damage output just by simply halting that Liberator army composition from moving. And actually, I just mentioned that this game is probably gonna go on for a little while longer, but with those Vipers out and a lot of these Liberators picked off for free, Serral obtains the victory here in game number 1. Game number 2 is gonna be on a map called Sky Garden. Let's have a quick little look at what it's all about. So this is the main base right here of Gumiho, and Serral is spawning on the other side as well. Now this is going to be a 4-player map. So there's a spawn location right here. I think there's another one right over here as well, so the rush distances between those 2 bases, at the very least through air, are not going to be very long. However, since there are rocks everywhere on the map, getting to the other side is still gonna take quite a bit of time. On top of that, of course, there's a similar spawn layout as well on the other side of the map. There's gonna be a base right here in the top right-hand corner of the map, and another one as well very nearby. Now, in this particular instance, we are dealing with close to ground spawn locations, I suppose. However, close to ground being quite relative, because the rush distance between these bases are still going to be rather long. And it does look like Serral will indeed be opening up with that hatchery first, after going for the pool first in the previous match. Let's have a look though. In these spawn locations, where exactly would a Zerg take their next base? I'm assuming this would be the 3rd base, with this one just being a little bit more vulnerable, as it is going to be on a low ground right there, and on top of that, it actually has this, you know, runaway path, I suppose, leading towards the expansion of his opponent. Whereas this one, when you indeed do take the 3rd up here, opens up the possibility to go for a gold base as a 4th, which is going to be quite accessible once these rocks indeed do get knocked down. There are 4 watchtowers on this map, it looks like. Pretty straightforward. I think they're going to be mostly meant for control, but since indeed we are on a 4-player map, I'm assuming that in particular this one is going to be quite important, as well as the one here in the top left corner. I always love checking out these new maps though. There are some really creative concepts going around, and it takes quite a while, right, to determine whether or not a map is actually good and whether or not a certain strategy is just simply going to be overpowered. I mean, I sometimes receive the question like, hey, Lowko, what makes a map good or bad? Like, whenever I talk about a map, right, I oftentimes mention whether or not I like it or whether or not I don't. And usually it's balance at the professional level of play in all matchups. So for example, some maps just simply favor Protoss players more than others. It's just simply a truth, right? Whereas some of them will favor a Zerg player. If a map has a lot of wide open areas and it's got a lot of easy expansions to take, it will just simply be favorable for Zerg as they prefer mass expanding. Whereas a map where you can easily secure 3 bases, for example, a map like Acolyte LE, which is currently on the ladder, where you can take your main expansion quite easily, which is built in, and then also one very easy tucked away 3rd base that you can also take very early on. That's a map that usually will favor Protoss players. And I mean, while it takes some time to determine whether or not the map is good, just by simply judging the layout over time, you'll be able to figure out roughly whether or not a map is going to be decent. Regardless though, of course, all of the balance that we are seeing in these games, right, it's shortly gonna be changing with a massive balance change coming to the game after the BlizzCon finals. I wonder exactly what will happen to the Terran versus Zerg matchup in particular, because for Zerg, there are indeed a couple of changes as well. The Infestor, for example, is receiving a massive overhaul. At the same time though, Terran mech in particular is getting a change too, with the fact that the Raven is gonna be an entirely new unit. I mean, it's still called the Raven, but it's essentially a new unit, you know, after the changes do go live. And I wonder what exactly, you know, the Terran versus Zerg matchup will look like after this all finishes up. Now, Gumiho, though, opening up once again with that reactor and finishing up that starport here in just a second, and he's gonna go for a marine drop once more. And I think that Serral knows precisely what he is going up against. I secretly hope that Gumiho is gonna show some mech play in this series as well. Of course, Serral in game number 1 really not missing a beat when it came to countering the bio-based style. He just simply completely shut it up. Or he shut it down, rather, and there really wasn't a whole lot that the Terran player could have done better, I felt like, either. Serral was just simply not allowing any damage to his economy early on. He scouted very actively, knew exactly what he was in for, and he's doing the exact same thing once again right now, right? He figured out what it is he's going up against, and he knows that right about the 5-minute mark, he can indeed expect about 16 Marines on the other side of the map. Now, let's have a look. Where exactly would the Terran player go ahead and drop on a map like this, right? Sometimes there are indeed nice little nukes that he can, you know, scoot away in, so he can hopefully try and do a little bit more damage. For example, by putting the Marines, you know, in between mineral patches and whatnot, you can oftentimes do a lot more damage. But I wonder exactly what Serral is going to be going for, because already you can see on that production tab, right? He's mostly started unit production right now, as well as additional queens. So he's building 2 more, building that total up to 7 right there in total. Very, very interesting. This is actually one of the things that I've been recommending to Zerg players for a long time. Actually, one of the Marines, look at that guy. He was left behind. That feels bad. But one of the things that I've been trying to tell a lot of Zerg players for a while that I've been coaching is to build more and more queens in the Zerg versus Terran matchup. A lot of the pro gamers, I mean, you can see the defense so far by Serral, right? A lot of the pro gamers are indeed opting for quite a couple of queens. So far, Serral is indeed positioning them quite well spread out so he can engage them whether or not the drop is going to be in the main base or not. Now, this is what I mean. Beautiful pickup there by Gumiho, lowering a couple of those Marines down towards that little nuke there. That's going to allow him to do a little bit more damage with these Marines. Now, of course, he has to be careful. One of the queens will end up dying right away, and the Marines will be forced to get picked up as well. But that's a nice little nuke. That's something that will take a while to get figured out, right? So this is more or less a platform that's meant for the Reaper to get jumped up on in the earlier part of the game, but it's also going to be abused here by these Marines for just a little while longer. Does look like, though, Serral so far doesn't really care all too much about it. He's just simply spreading the creep in every direction that the Terran Marines are currently not in. Very cool move so far, though, by Gumiho, because instead of going for that super quick 3rd base expansion, he's going for a faster base here instead. So, or rather for a faster 3rd medevac as well. This is something that can easily catch a Zerg player off guard. Because while the Zerg player was fine at defending the first 16 Marines, what about 24 and 3 medevacs instead? And it may sound silly, but Zerg players are currently trying to cut corners as much as they can in the Terran versus Zerg matchup. They really do not want to, you know, make any more units than they absolutely have to, because that slows down their economy. But banelings are indeed made defensively right here for the Zerg player. Beautiful target firing, however. Misses one there, and once again, Serral shuts it down. Initially, a lot of those banelings did get picked up very rapidly there by the purple Terran player, but it does look like he's not quite going to be capable of doing so. And actually, uncharacteristically right there as well, I'm pretty sure that combat shield was not finished up by the time that that engagement hit. And that's sort of a timing that you are trying to obtain, just because the combat shield is a massive upgrade that will make it much easier to fight all of these queens, zerglings, and banelings as well. And Gumiho actually kind of dropping the ball there, not playing it as perfectly as I would have expected for him, from him so far. And once again, Serral, I mean, he's given a slight lead, and it looks like he's running away with it so far, right? I mean, he's really not trying to take any more risks than he absolutely needs to. He did, by the way, opt to go for this base here, which I assumed he would not be taking this early on, but he's picking up so many little leads, and he's just simply running away with the victory if this is gonna go, you know, unharmed so far. Once again, switching towards that Hydralisk Den upgrade here very early. He's going for the double upgrades, not going for the quicker, you know, +1 carapace this time around, although actually, it started up slightly faster, and I'm expecting here, if he plans on playing a near mirrored build, that he's going to be starting up an infestation pit here very shortly to tech up towards that hive once again, and potentially go up to a greater spire, or of course that Ultralisk cavern. Third base is now secured by the Terran player. He's going for that switch towards the 2-2 upgrades as well. No changes right now as far as the unit compositions go just yet, though. Just simply focusing on Widowmines, Medevacs, and Marines as well. But so many Hydralisks here actually on the production tab. I wonder if Serral is planning on maybe making an aggressive move here. He's going for the run-by right now, trying to see if he can do a little bit of damage. However, Gumiho being on top of that, he is microing both the Marine drop on this side of the map, although apparently the Marine drop is nowhere to be seen anymore, so I guess there wasn't a whole lot left over to micro, but he was also dealing with this. Now, I like this a lot. Look at this cute little move, right? This is something that the top-of-the-line Terran players will do, knowing that there are indeed potentials for counterattacks at this point. Banelings are being morphed in here, but a single Widowmine can kill all of those in just a matter of seconds. I wonder, though, judging by the amount of units that are currently in production here, I'll actually hold that thought, because once again, the Marines are going to have to defend against a whole lot of these Banelings. SCVs are pulled right away, and a couple of them will end up dying, but so far, great defense there by the purple Terran player. But I wonder, though, is it true that the Zerg player wants to go for a move right here? Because so far, there is no Ultralisk cavern just yet, right? That means that he's more than likely going to make up for a big push. Now, 2-2 is just about to finish up here for Gumiho. He will try and see if he can potentially, oh man, do a little bit of damage here with double Medevac drops as well. But I wonder what angle does the Zerg player want to engage into right now? He's making up for a push for sure. Making a lot more Banelings, a very Hydralisk heavy army as well, but there is just simply so much Zerg. Terran will need to be careful. Widowmines are getting burrowed right away. Trying to micro back here to the best of his abilities, triggering a couple of those Widowmines as well is Serral. But once more, Zerg is not done just yet. The new Banelings just finished in morphing as well, and is that just simply not a little bit too much Zerg to deal with right now? A couple of Medevacs out on the map as well to try and deal some more damage. 26 Zerglings on the production tab as well. They're currently all spawning. They're trying to make their way across. SCVs are pulled off the line, and Hydras are just simply dealing so much damage. Reinforcing Zerglings have arrived. They're trying to do as much damage to these Marines as they possibly can as well, and I think that all of a sudden Gumiho is gonna be caught with his pants down, and Serral obtains the victory here as well in game number 2. Here we are. This is going to be the next game. Now, I think that Gumiho needs to tighten up his playstyle just a little bit, though, because so far, Serral obtains a slight little lead in the earlier part of the game, and he just simply runs away with the mid-game. Right? I mean, Gumiho gave him a couple of Marines here and there, a Medevac or two here and there as well, and Serral barely lost anything. Sure, he lost the Queen and maybe a couple of Zerglings, but it's really not that much, and in the grand scheme of things, in the middle part of the game, Serral just simply had too much stuff, and Gumiho will need to step it up right here. Now, the next match that we're on is gonna be on the map called Anomaly, and as you may have already noticed by the minimap, it's a bit of a weird map. I mean, look at these zigzags. The main path on this map is indeed going to be moving around in a bit of a weird zigzag. not allowing you to cross the distance very rapidly if it wasn't for these bridges that are indeed covering these individual gaps as well. Well, there's actually nothing over here. There's 2 bridges over here, then a couple on this side as well. I'm assuming that it's just simply going to be very similar here for the majority of this map. Pretty interesting, because judging by the layout of this map, right, the natural is easy to take, but then the third base feels rather far away, which is going to be in particular important for Terran and Protoss players. But on top of that, there's also this island here hanging out in the corner. So if you are a Terran player, you could take this as your natural, right, pretty early on into this game, but then you can just simply build the third command center over there and build your third base at this island. And I wonder if that's going to be something we will see in this match as well, that may very well trigger, you know, Serral to go ahead and build something along the lines of, for example, Mutalisk rather than Hydras. As far as creep spread goes, though, for a Zerg player, this is going to be rather interesting too, because not only will you have to, like, spread creep towards the northern end of this map to secure the third base location, it will then have to go around a corner, which you can already do by going past these bridges. So this is going to get interesting very fast. This is a map layout that we don't usually see in StarCraft 2, and I wonder how it will indeed play out. Now, Gumiho, he's more than likely going to be stuck on a smaller amount of bases in this particular match, right? Although, if he takes this as his island and he can take this as his fourth, it shouldn't necessarily be very bad whatsoever. But I wonder if he's going to play Bio once again. This does look like a map that you can quite easily secure with mechanical base units instead, and he's very good at playing that mechanical style. Not really doing it so far though, although this time around we do see that reactor go down once again, and we'll see whether or not he's going to do the big switchery on the factory and switch it up just a little bit. Meanwhile though, on the other side of the map, the first couple of Zerglings are indeed out. The Reaper is going to be able to pick up a kill or two, trying to see whatever he can do, but as far as no drones die here in the earlier part of the game, it's really not that big of a deal for the Zerg player thus far. This is mostly just to force the Zerg unit, or the Zerg rather, to produce some units as well, to make sure that the Zerg is not just going to be building a heck of a lot of drones. And here indeed we will see the switch into that starport, and then also the switch in playstyle in the third game of this series. So far, Gumiho has figured out that the bio style is not working out, and while this definitely can still transition towards bio, he's going to open up with not only Hellions here in the earlier part of the game, but also a tech lab that will likely come on this starport here in just a little bit. We'll keep an eye on whether or not it's going to be Ravens, or whether or not it's going to be something along the lines of, for example, what are they called? Banshees. Now, there is indeed a double gas already, so we do have the potential for gas as well, and therefore there is the option for him to go for the cloaking field too. But here we go. This is going to be a switch up in playstyle, and let's see how well Serral will be able to deal with this weird you know, switch in the series, right? In the middle of the series. This seems like a... Well, it's not that weird of a switch, actually. It's pretty common at this point in the game, but it's more or less like a change of play style right now that will make it pretty important for the Zerg to respond to this differently. Because Hellions, of course, they are very good at roasting all of these workers if they are given the chance. Now, the third base is now taken. Serral desperately trying to spread some creep in that direction as well. It's going to be very important. No switch-ups just yet, though. No Roach Warrens going down. No, you know, additional units really being produced. Just a couple of Queens once again. And indeed, it is going to be a switch into that Raven. Now, the Overlord came back in, and while it did get shot down there by the Viking eventually, he saw that something was producing out of this starport, and also that no upgrade was being researched there in the tech lab. So it's a pretty big indication that this is going to be a Raven-based playstyle. And the Raven, like I mentioned, it is indeed going to be changed up in just a couple of weeks, but for now, it's still going to be very powerful just in straight up solid macro games, as they, you know, are both harassment based units that are also going to be very powerful a little bit later on into this game. Third command center already going down for Gumiho. Does look like he may want to just simply secure this one at his third, and maybe he will go for the island at his fourth base if we get to that point in this series. Regardless though, Serral so far really not taking any risks whatsoever, right? I mean, look at this. Well, I'm actually quite surprised. He knew that there was indeed going to be... I was going to say, like, he knew that there was going to be a starport with a tech lab, and he still did not make any spore crawlers. He's got to add on a couple, really trying to cut some corners here, right? Only a single one so far. Hellions, however, are now moving onwards, and while Banes are being morphed in, I wonder how good this is going to be. Double armory going down at this point in the game as well. So Gumiho is indeed going to make that switch towards the mech-based style. He's very good at that, but he's right now using that Raven to slow down the creep spread here of the Zerg player, which is extremely important. Slowing that down is very annoying for the Zerg, and he's going to be able to use these units a little bit later on into this game as well, just fine for his army compositions, right? And that means that he can set up a powerful timing attack once these double armories finish up their upgrades, because the creep spread is going to be halted quite a bit. Also, of course, this allows him to switch these Hellions into Hellbats if he so decides to choose. Could go for the auto turret there. Indeed, he's going to try and do so. Eat up some of that energy off of these queens. Creep, however, immediately replaced here. And gotta be careful. The Zerglings are going for the wraparound. They do manage to get it quite nicely there. Although a lot of them, however, were apparently greased up in Vaseline. And I don't really know exactly what. But they were indeed capable of getting around that Zergling embrace. The Hellions will be able to get him out of there, but the creep spread has been halted here for just a little while longer. And then indeed, we do see the 1-1 coming in. Double siege tanks now in production as well. And Gumiho is switching up his playstyle entirely here in game number 3. And I like it a lot. So far, he's going to have to, Serral that is, right? Serral is going to have to switch into a different kind of setup. I mean, he's still going to go for the Hydraling Bane style, which is going to be good against both bio as well as mech-based armies. But usually you want your Vipers out quite a bit earlier to deal with any kind of potential liberators, but also, of course, with the blinding clouds on the Thors, the siege tanks, and of course the Yanks on all of those units as well. Now, Hellions are trying to poke in. Banelings were left behind here for a little bit of defense. A couple of these Hellbats were also left behind to try and, you know, roast some of the Zerglings, but a lot of them do still end up falling. Zerglings died there for just a little bit, but the Hellions now here to recuperate a little bit of damage. And he's going to be capable of just simply losing 2 SCVs there in the grand scheme of things. Now, Baneling's actually hiding off in the corner. Beautiful scout there by Gumiho, showing what he's capable of. This could have easily gone unscouted. Checking around where these Zerglings were hiding. But apparently they still do get 2 or so Hellions there for their troubles. And another command center will go down at this point in the game. A lot of siege tanks out right now. Now, of course, Gumiho was the one that really popularized that new school mech army composition for Terran players, where essentially the Terran player is going for both Thors as well as Medevacs. And I'm saying it, and he's immediately queuing it up. This is great. I love this playstyle. So, for the longest time, Medevacs were only used in bio-based compositions, right? However, Gumiho is showing what he's capable of, and he's still going to build them. Well, he actually just canceled them there, because he must have been shortly supply blocked there. Interestingly enough, he's actually hitting a slight supply block there. But regardless, Gumiho is the player that is using a lot of these Thors right now as dropships as well. Very similar to, for example, StarCraft 1, right? He's not using their healing capabilities, but he's still allowing himself to get a lot more maneuverability on these Thors out on the map, just by simply microing them back and chasing down a lot of the Zerg units as well. Now we do see a couple of Swarmhouse on the production tab. I like this one a lot here from Serral. He will be able to kill the Zergling, or rather the siege tanks and whatnot, quite comfortably with that. But already Gumiho has finished up his 1-1 upgrades, and he's setting up for a very powerful timing here. Zerglings, however, as well as the Hydras and the Banelings, are currently making a way across the map. They're gonna try and see if they can deal some damage here. Nice wall by Gumiho, trying to prevent the Zerg from all that maneuverability that they are so very well known for, forcing him to go through this funnel here in the center of the map. And the real question is there going to be enough available here for Gumiho? Will Gumiho be able to defend against this massive amount of Zerg that is currently making its way across the map? Creep is already everywhere, though. This creep is not going to be halted. I feel like Serral absolutely plans on dealing a heck of a lot of damage here, but the question is, will he be able to do so? Gold base is now actually, or rather the island base is now also being taken, but hold that thought, because it does look like we are in for a massive push here in just a little bit. Siege tanks will indeed end up taking a little bit of damage. Banelings are trying to control right now as well with a lot of those units, but so far the defense has been pretty decent here by Gumiho, picking a lot of these units up as well. And of course, while losing a few of your SCVs is annoying, he's gonna be able to land the mules just fine and catch up in economy very easily. This is an important part here for the Terran player. He needs to try and see if he can defend against this Zerg onslaught, because shortly it will be maxing out in just a couple of minutes. Will the Zerg be able to stop this from happening right now? That is the real question. Zerglings and Hydras and Banelings are trying to roll forward once again. Siege tanks are in the back. They're dealing a lot of damage here. Thorson are also trying to see if they can do some additional work. The command center has landed at that 4th base location, but it does look like Serral just simply has too much stuff, and he may very very well just simply be too good at taking... Oh my god, man. Serral is playing like a monster here. Really not missing a beat. And Gumiho going for a completely different playstyle, being quite successful in the earlier part of the game with it. But Serral analyzed what's up, and he's just absolutely shutting it down. And GG once again gets called, and Gumiho ends up losing game number 3 as well. Not gonna lie, Serral is sort of making his opponent look like a fool right now. I mean, Gumiho, he's one of the very best Terran players on the planet, but I mean, Serral is really not missing a beat. I'm really impressed with the way that he's defending. I mean, Gumiho is trying a lot of different ways to deal some economic damage here in the earlier part of the games, but neither the Marines or the Hellions are really achieving a whole lot when it comes to killing the worker count. And it's a very important thing for a Terran player to, you know, try and see if he can potentially slow down that Zerg's economy, either by doing a big push to just simply force the Zerg unit, or rather the Zerg units to be producing additional army units themselves as well, or just by simply killing a lot of the workers, which of course is also going to be a legitimate option. But Gumiho, I mean, he is definitely one of the very best Terran players on the planet, and Serral is making short work of him so far. Now there we go, let me fill in that scoreboard real quick. Actually, no, that's a mistake right there, Lowko. Gumiho is going to currently be 3-0 behind. That means that since this is going to be a best of 7, Serral will need to win this game, and he will be able to be declared the victor in this entire series, which would be insane. If Serral can take a 4-0 victory against someone along the likes of Gumiho, I think that he is gonna have a grand old time at the BlizzCon Grand Finals in just a couple of weeks. Now, of course, both of these players are practicing their butts off. I think that Gumiho is showing in quite a couple of tournaments lately, though. I've seen him participate in quite a few of them, whereas Serral, I think that Serral is just mostly practicing by himself. Haven't really seen him outside of a couple of these online cups, like for example the TLMC. He's not really showing nearly as many games as Gumiho is, and that's a very common thing for pro gamers to do. Essentially, since they are practicing so very hard, and they're oftentimes also trying to figure out new play styles, they want to sort of show their opponent games from a couple of months ago, right? Because if you can show up with a new strategy, right, and your opponents don't quite know exactly how to counter it, and they're assuming you're still going to play as you did a couple of months ago, oftentimes you're going to be capable of absolutely crushing them. So usually at this point in time, a couple of weeks leading up to tournaments at the very least, players stop showing any games, and this is kind of the exciting downtime in StarCraft 2. As you have already noticed, I'm really excited for BlizzCon. I've been mentioning it in a couple of videos. I will be there myself as well, so if you do notice me walking around, definitely come and say hi. But regardless, I'm really looking forward to this, because we should be in for such a sick finals. I mean, I've been watching a lot of StarCraft 2 lately. GSL Super Tournament had just concluded a couple of days ago, and I mean, the level of play in StarCraft 2 is just insane. It's just insane. There are some moments where players are just so evenly matched that it's just not really fair. And the level of play is just insane as far as just skill level goes, and tech switches and mind games and everything along those lines. We're gonna see some of that at BlizzCon for sure. Now, Serral, so far, is making short work of his opponent. He's definitely looking to do something similar in this game once again, right? Because pro gamers don't want to play epic games. They want to play clean, cut-out victories where they really don't drop the ball at all and they just simply obtain the victory with relative ease, right? That's what pro gamers want to do. We would like to see something a little bit closer and something a little bit more exciting. There we go. Nice deny there by Gumiho, preventing his opponent here from taking that third base, as he has been doing in the entirety of this series so far. Now, the map that we're currently on, by the way, is going to be Catalyst. Very similar setup, and so far actually Gumiho is opening up once again with these Hellions, and that's why getting this base up at the correct timing for a Zerg is very important, because right now he's not only gonna be, you know, delayed here with the third base, but he's also giving the full map control here to the Terran player, and this is gonna be annoying because Serral, he's not been messed with so far, and in this game he will get messed with. He's trying his very best to get this third base up and running. Looks like he will once again get the Knight here as well. That drone gets roasted too, and slowly but surely, a slight little advantage will appear here for the red Terran player. Now, once again, this did all get scouted. We see the cloaking upgrade start here anyway, even though Gumiho is opening up with a Raven first. Very interesting move there by the red Terran player. This is something that we haven't really seen a whole lot of just yet. I think that it, once again, will be using this Raven primarily as a detector, but of course, the auto turrets are still going to be very helpful here too. Although apparently once more, Gumiho is going to switch into a mech-based army composition here, at the very least for the time being. It doesn't look like he's going to make the switch towards bio anytime soon. Hellions trying to see if they can get an angle there. However, by judging the positioning there on those queens as well as the Zerglings, he knows that he will need to get on out of there once more. Queen in the main base already prepared for this too, but the third base is still not up, and you know, we're almost 5 minutes into this game. Third command center has already started here for the Terran player himself, so that means that so far Gumiho must feel just a little bit more comfortable. He's trying to throw his opponent off, and I like this a lot, right? Going for that upgrade there, but then also following it up with a Raven and a Viking and whatnot, it's kind of odd. So right now, we see that single Banshee moving across the map. The cloaking field will finish up in just a couple of seconds. The Raven was already out and trying to do a little bit of damage, but now we also have this potential for a Hellion run by. This is going to get crazy very, very fast, because there's like several unit compositions and several units trying to make their move across the map, and this is something we haven't really seen a whole lot of. Now, there is indeed a Spore Crawler out. Auto turrets will go down almost immediately, and that means that the Banshee will be able to continue fighting here for just a little while longer. At the same time though, the Hellions are moving onwards here at the third base location. Zerglings are going to try and go for the wraparound, not quite managing to do so just yet. Couple of worker kills here and there, or at the very least some of these units will get some damage in. Beautiful splits there actually as well on those Hellbats, trying to see if they can get some additional damage done, or like blowing up all of those Banelings as well. And even though the Banshee was dealt with very nicely and so was the Raven, at this point the Hellions and the Hellbats are dealing an awful lot of damage. Now the question is it going to be the smart decision though to go after the hatchery? So far, not entirely sure if I agree with that decision making. However, 7 workers do end up dying there, and that's a very big deal. Queens will be able to hit those transfuses on that main hatchery there, so that's gonna at the very least live for a little while longer. But 7 drones going down, and with continued auto turret aggression there in the main base as well, it looks like Serral will be able to deflect this, but not without taking quite a significant amount of losses. Not only when it comes to the amount of units killed, there you can indeed see that there are 33 units killed here by Gumiho so far in this series, but also just by simply losing a couple of those workers. And once again, the reinforcing Hellions have morphed into Hellbats, and they are ready to continue this aggression for a little while longer, going after that mineral line once again and just simply roasting up that hatchery. It takes a long time for these units to kill a hatchery at this point in the game, but the Baneling splits are incredible, and he's managing to deal with quite a bit of this splash damage very, very nicely. Hellions, however, once again going after that mineral line, trying to see if they can deal some damage. Solid defense so far by Serral, trying to make the most of this scenario, and once again the Banshee is back into the main base after it did indeed go back home. I think it must have gotten repaired, or maybe a second one was produced as well. Zerglings are desperately trying to go for a counterattack, picking up a couple of SCV kills up as well, but so far this is a game that is quite nicely in control here of the Terran player. Look at that, once again dealing a little bit of damage here and there, mixing it up, going for a different play style, and I gotta say I really like this move here by the Terran player so far. Trying to go after the Banshee here inside of that main base. Does look like he will be able to get it, but not without losing quite a couple of drones in the process. Hellions, however, are currently setting up for another nice little run by, and this may very well be detrimental right here. This is going to be a crucial move. Banelings are not in position, and the drones are indeed ready for their barbecue. 13 drones immediately going down, building up to 16 there. And that is the damage that Gumiho has been looking for this entire series so far. Just simply trying to spread his opponent thin, right? And while the initial defense of the Hellions was very solid, the initial defense of the Raven was good, the initial defense of the Banshee was spot on as well. After being pulled in all kinds of directions for about a good 3 to 4 minutes or so, eventually Serral just barely slipped up, and he ended up losing a substantial amount of workers in this game so far. 30 worker kills. That is what Gumiho has been looking for this entire series. Now, once again, we do see that switch to the Swarmhost, a very cost-efficient unit here, but Gumiho is just simply building up more and more units, right? He's gonna be capable of continuing this Banshee aggression as well, something that I haven't really seen him do a whole lot of just yet. He's going for that 4th command center, so trying to see if he can build up, once again, that mech-based composition and securing that economy as well. And while there are now Swarmhosts moving across the map, there's also a scan at the 3rd base location here of the Zerg player, and he's gonna try and see if he can keep these drones alive for a little while longer. Beautiful sensor tower placement as well, by the way, on that minimap. Look at that. Really taking huge control of this area. But so far, more and more workers get picked off with some great micro here by the Terran player in red. Trying to see if he can do as much damage as he can. Now, I think that one of these Banshees may very well end up dying. So far, not quite going to be the case. At the same time, on the other side of the map, couple of these siege tanks do take a significant amount of damage. I guess that he was busy and preoccupied here microing on the other side of the map, but I think that 2 siege tanks in exchange for a couple of drone kills is definitely not terrible here either. Couple of Locusts now, however, also making their way towards that 4th base location. SCVs desperately scrambling inside of the main base, trying to see whatever they can do. Once again, though, the Swarm Hosts are getting a lot of value done, and I wonder if Serral will be able to crawl himself back into this match, because so far, there is definitely no denying in the fact that Gumiho is just barely ahead. He's producing a lot more stuff than his opponent. He's already ahead when it comes to the supply count as well as the worker count. And the question is, will he be able to close it out? Because there is now an army based around queens as well as swarm hosts moving across the map. And there's not really a counter to the swarm hosts just yet. These locusts are ready to deal some damage. Beautiful positioning right there, though, on that PDD, shutting it down and allowing these Hellbats to deal with those initial locusts there very, very nicely. At the same time, couple of Hellions caught out on the map, trying to see if they can deal some damage here as well. And it looks like the queens will try and join this engagement here very shortly as well. However, at this point, I think that Gumiho has realized, hey, there's really not a whole lot of army supply for my opponent outside of all of these swarm hosts. Should I not just simply try and see if I can potentially deal some damage? And he is smelling blood. He's gonna try and see if he can move across the map, see if he can potentially obtain the victory right here, right now. Gumiho is trying to get in position here. Swarmhouse, however, are once again getting their Locust off of cooldown. That means that they're once again going to try and fly forward, try to target fire down those siege tanks, getting a couple of the Hellbats here in the process. And while the Queens are dealing with all of the air units as well, the siege tanks are slowly trying to move forward, reinforcing Hellions, now also getting in position once again. However, the Swarmhouse, half of them at the very least, once again have their Locust available. They're going to try and move onwards. Locusts are trying to connect with all of those siege tanks, trying to use the splash damage right there of those siege tanks to his advantage as well, but it's a little bit too much, and Serral is forced to tap out of game number 4. This is one of the maps that, when I first had a look at it, got me very excited. I don't know if it's any good, but the map layout and the ideas and the thought processes behind it are really very cool. So first off, it's called Neon Violet Square. I mean, I don't think I really need to tell you exactly why it's called Neon Violet. I think that part is pretty obvious. But regardless, all over the map, there are these little cubes that are set up, right? And while initially I didn't really know exactly what their function was, they're right here in the center as well. They are essentially pathing, blocking buildings. Now, they cannot be attacked, they cannot be targeted or whatever, but essentially what that means is that while you can indeed maneuver across this map with, for example, Thors and big units, they're gonna not be capable of going through this field very easily. So while a Thor will be able to go through this square quite easily, it will not be able to go through these ones nearly as effectively whatsoever. Essentially meaning that if you want to maneuver around this map, right, you're gonna have a big benefit if you're gonna do so with more mobile armies. So this is definitely a map that favors Baneling kind of styles, Marine Medevac kind of compositions. Compositions based around the Stalker as well as the Zealot, right? Whereas the higher tech units, the bigger ones, the big ground-based armies, usually are gonna have a harder time trying to make their way across. And this is something that is not very explored in StarCraft 2 just yet. I think it would be really cool to have something, maybe not necessarily this map, but something along those lines out on the map pool as well. It just simply favors one playstyle other than, you know, it just simply being a big map, so it's focused around macro, it being a small map, it being focused around rushing. Whereas a map like this, I mean, it's rather big, but it's still gonna be capable of, you know, focusing the players on a very specific play style. I think that's a really, really cool concept, something that has not quite been discovered just yet. There's also these weird rock formations that essentially open up these like new pathways that make it easier for big units to make their way across the map. But of course, these don't really come into play until much later into the game. So, you know, you really are, you know, forcing players to go for a certain play style, which I think is a really, really cool concept. Regardless, though, it's currently 3-1, so that means that Gumiho will try and obtain the victory once again. He needs to. If he does not win this game, and the next 2 after this one, he will not be able to obtain the victory. He needs to win every single last match in this series from here on out. Now, Serral opening up with a quick Zergling speed right now, actually leaving the drones into the gas geyser as well, pulling them off right now that he's got nearly the second 100 ready to go, and that means that he can start up, you know, whatever upgrades that he chooses after these queens finish up. Zerglings, however, trying to make their way across. He's going to try and see if he can pick up that command center building SCV, but I don't think it's going to be quite in time. He's just waiting for the Zergling speed to finish up at this point, knowing that he's probably already going to be a little bit too late, but he's going to use these first 2 links to try and get some scouting information. So that means that while he's still going for the Pneumatized Carapace upgrade, which is the Overlord speed, he will be capable of knowing a little bit more about what his opponent is up to slightly earlier on into this game. And speaking of which, it once again does look like Gumiho has figured out the playstyle that works very well against Serral. He is going to go ahead and see if he can potentially deal some damage once again with Hellions, and then the switch to watch a starport with a tech lab as well. And so far, it seems like that most definitely is going to be the more beneficial playstyle. Now, the question is he going to try and go for Thors? Is he going to try and go for siege tanks? I mean, he certainly could if he wanted to. Now, this time around is something a little bit different. Look at that. Gumiho may very well make the switch from mech towards bio in just a little bit. And while he's once again going for that cloaking field upgrade, he's also getting himself a medevac. So I'm assuming he's planning on dropping these Hellions inside of the main base of his opponent. Or, of course, the natural if he so decides to choose. Now, of course, air units, they don't really care about a whole lot of these, you know, path blockers either. So right now, Serral is going to be able to get it in there. Beautiful boost there, actually, by Gumiho. And while it may sound a little bit silly to say, it does prevent this from getting scouted so far, and Gumiho is going to be able to lift up all of these Hellions into that medevac, and this is completely unscouted. I mean, of course, Serral does know that there wasn't a Viking this time around, like in the previous games. He also hasn't seen a Banshee just yet. Plus, he knows that at this point there is a potential for a Raven out. So far, it really hasn't been the case. Also, this Reaper actually scouted ahead to see where the Overlords were positioned, but this is completely unscouted so far. Serral is gonna have to respond to this perfectly. So far, not really losing anything just yet. Not really losing anything just yet. Great defense there. Great reaction time there by Serral. If those drones were mining for just a split second longer, this could have gone disastrously wrong here in just a matter of seconds. But I think the Zerglings will be forced to the natural here very shortly though, because so far there is really no defense here just yet. Question is, where do you want to engage at this point, right? I mean, the scouting Reaper has gone down. At this point, if you are Terran player, or if you are the Terran player, how are you going to do this? How are you going to decide where you want to move in? And Serral, hey, he's going in. He's like, yo, dude, I'm assuming you still have that medevac out here, right? What exactly is your plan with it? And he's doing a good job, not really losing anything to it just yet. Now, the Cloaked Banshee has arrived. Serral apparently is, however, caught off guard for just a little bit of time because, of course, he was dealing with that medevac drop here. He was probably making the assumption that this Banshee would come in quite a bit later. So, interesting playstyle once again, and still picking up quite a lot of worker kills. Doesn't want to lose that Banshee, though, and Gumiho does end up losing it. But at the same time, the Hellions are once again unloading, and they're gonna go for the drone barbecue. I mean, summertime is mostly over here in Europe, but I mean, the drone barbecue will continue for just a little while longer, and 12 workers end up dying. That is not an amount that is, something you cannot come back from. I mean, it's still definitely something that's manageable, but Gumiho definitely got some damage done here in the earlier part of the game, which is something that he did not quite manage to do in the first couple of matches in this series. Now, we do see the switch over right here. Double factory once more going down, and actually, even though this is a map with a lot of these, pathing blockers, which would definitely benefit bio-based armies instead, Gumiho, he's tried playing bio, it didn't really work, so even though this is not the ideal map for it, he's still gonna be playing mech here nonetheless. He's also aware of the fact, of course, that there is a good chance that his opponent is going to go for Mutalisk play on a map like this, just because, of course, Mutas will be quite a bit more maneuverable. So going for that NG Bay opens up the possibility for him to go for some more damage. Now, the medevac does end up dying there. At the same time, new Hellbats are making their way across the map too. At this point, it does look like the Banshee will get picked off, as well as every single last of these Hellbats. Ooh, Banelings are trying to connect there. Great splitting once more here by the red Terran player. I don't know if he wants to move out that ramp, though. I think that's going to be a little bit risky, although he doesn't really care. I mean, Gumiho knows that it's going to be a bit risky, but these units were sacrificial anyway. He's probably going to get value if he surrounds, or if he gets surrounded by Zerglings anyway, so he is feeling alright. You know, just simply slowing down that mining time for just a little bit, sitting in those little nukes there, and he even gets 2 workers there for his troubles too. And Gumiho, he's effectively reducing the amount of supply here available for the Zerg player, meaning that if there's going to be a big push, it's going to come in quite a bit later. And here we see the classic Gumiho playstyle, something that he figured out earlier in 2017. He's gonna go for the Thor drops in this match as well, and that's a very menacing thing to do because, of course, Thors, right? They have a hard time maneuvering past these pathing blockers, but they don't really care too much if they're inside of that medevac, right? And while, of course, it's pretty obvious what's loaded into that medevac, he's still going to be able to move them around the map quite easily. Now, so far, the creep spread is really not that far out either. Compared to the first couple of games in this series, Serral seems to have a hard time in this one so far. Third base has been secured here by Gumiho. He's going for that 4th command center right now too. But here we go. This is going to be a little bit of drop harass here with 2 Thors. And this is something that was very unheard of, right? This was something that was an all-in just a couple of years ago. But right now, it's more or less a nice little change of pace. And it's going to be rather annoying, right? Of course, the Thors recently, a couple of patches ago, also got themselves just a slight little increase in armor, making them far more mobile or far more powerful against these Zerglings here in particular. Now, currently there is a Overlord moving across the map, and this one is loaded up with Banelings. We'll have to keep an eye out on this one, because it does look like so far the Terran player has got absolutely no idea about this Dropper Lord that is currently, you know, making its way towards the main base here of the Zerg player. Come on, are you gonna drop him? I guess that he's preoccupied here with these Hellions that are moving across the map, as well as the double Thor drops. But here we go. There's movement on the minimap, and that does mean that Gumiho will need to respond. Oh my god, that was insane. Did you see the response time right there? That was absolutely ludicrous. Trying to deal with that so perfectly. The only way that he was going to be able to deal with that Baneling drop was by responding to it in time. And he barely had vision of it. He must have been also scanning and microing here on the other side of the map. But he just simply got all of his SCVs together and ran them away. This is the Gumiho we all know. This is the Gumiho that won GSL. This is the highest level of StarCraft 2 that you can really expect right now in StarCraft. I mean, that's insane, right? Like, the response time right there, absolutely crazy. I mean, that's just not like an easy thing to do. It's a very, very hard thing to do. At this point, though, siege tanks are making their way across, and while they will need to take turns in order to go past this little wall, it does look like he doesn't really care either. Of course, this also makes it more difficult, though, for Zerglings and whatnot to get the wrap around these units. Look at this, though. This is so silly. I don't know if he knows. This is gonna be so silly. They're gonna be making their way. No, I don't think you want to siege up right there, my man, because the Zerglings are currently moving onwards. Now, these siege tanks are trying to move back. This is like StarCraft 1 all over again. Look at this. These siege tanks are desperately trying to move past this little angle. Very annoying. So far, Gumiho is trying to move forward, but he doesn't realize just yet that the pathing in this match is a little bit different. Look at it. That's so silly. Gumiho will be forced, though, to pick up a couple of these locusts, losing his siege tank there in the process. But if you siege up one tank during that little gap, that's not going to allow you to move onwards once again. Siege tanks, however, are going to be able to siege up in a very strong position. Not only will the Hellions be forced forward right now, but if the Zergs, you know, Hydras and Banelings or Zerglings and whatnot are trying to connect, they're first off trying to, they will first off be forced to take a couple of these shells here from these siege tanks, which will essentially one-shot them. And I think that this may very well be the beginning of a slow push. Now, 8 more of these units are indeed in production. The Thor will be able to get a couple of kills there inside of the main base, but not without losing the medevac and the Thor itself too. Banelings are trying to connect there, but that is not quite what you're looking for if you are the Zerg player. That was a pretty big loss, and Gumiho is inching ahead right now when it comes to the supply counts. Here we go, though. Locusts are moving onwards. They're gonna be on cooldown for the next couple of seconds here. Is there going to be enough Zerg to deal with all of these units here that are out on the map for the Terran player in red? A 4th base has been secured. There's a planetary fortress on it. A 5th command center is now also building here for Gumiho, and while it does look like eventually on this side of the map he will be cleared up, he has got a very menacing economy and even an additional base that his opponent does not quite have at this point in the match. Look at those beautiful neon panels, by the way. I don't really know exactly what's going on there, but it looks awesome. There are indeed more and more factories going down, as well as that sensor tower. So once again, I mean, even though I don't think the Zerg player really knows about this base just yet, as soon as the sensor tower finishes, that's going to be a massive indication that that part of the map has been secured here by the Terran player. Zerg trying to move onwards, though. I think that Zerg may very well just be trying to, you know, get that maxed out army going and just make a big move across the map. Because while the 2-2 upgrades are now started here for the Zerg player, right? 3-3 is already being produced here by Gumiho. And 3-3, that's a menacing upgrade. If you get to a maxed out Terran force, right? And they're going to be fully maxed out as far as the ground upgrades go, it's going to be an extremely tough, a very tough army to stop. I mean, Hydras are currently trying to make their way across. They're called at this weird maneuverability, you know, issue that they are indeed trying to get at. But I wonder how this is gonna go. I mean, Terran is gonna max out here in just a minute or so. I mean, if he keeps on losing units, of course, it's going to be a tricky thing to do. But at this point, I mean, he's just simply trying to contain the Zerg's creep spread, right? Making sure that he's going to be capable of moving onwards here, slowly but surely. Rallying the majority of his units across the map as well. And that's going to be very terrifying, right? He may even want to go for like a slight drop inside of that main base once again as well. I mean, there are plenty of units here available. These locusts will have to get dealt with perfectly. So far, doing so very nicely. Siege tanks, however, are sieged everywhere, and they are dealing so much damage to each and every one of those units. Vikings are also picking up all of the locusts in the sky before they can even land. But is there going to be enough Zerg here to deal with that? It does look like there's just barely not enough. Reinforcing Hellions dealing so much damage as well, just simply picking up so many of those units. And I mean, even though this map may not necessarily be built for a lot of these slow-moving unit compositions, it does look like if you manage to get in position, right, and the creep spread has been halted for long enough, it's very difficult for the Zerg player to get the wraparound as well to try and deal the damage that he is looking to do at this point in the game. And while the locusts are now also flying from the main base, the Vikings are closing the distance. Siege tanks are now dealing so much damage as well to every single last of these units on the ground. And with so many reinforcing army units moving across the map here for the Terran player, I wonder if there's just not simply a little bit too much. I mean, siege tanks are being loaded up into the medevac. They are dropped on the other side of these, you know, panels, I suppose. I don't really know exactly what to call them, but at this point, I mean, they are slow pushing forward, trying to secure the position there outside of the 5th base here of Serral. And once again, Serral is forced to GG out of this game. So Gumiho has to win 4 games in a row. And so far, he's got 2 down already. Very impressed with the way that he's approaching this so far. I mean, in game number 1 and 2, he tried playing bio. He figured out that that was not going to be quite, you know, the strategy that he should be going for. But it turns out that if you mix it up a little, right, and you throw Serral off of his standard game, you can actually take a game off of him. I mean, I gotta say, right, while the Hellion play is very standard, the switch into the starport and then going for the Viking, the Raven, and the Cloak Banshee is very odd. Normally, it's either like 2 Cloak Banshees or 2 Ravens or a Viking into medevacs or anything along those lines. But the way that Gumiho has been producing units out of his factory and starport so far are a little bit odd. And I think that that is a conscious decision. While he knows that they are not the optimal way of playing it, he knows very well now that Serral is going to be capable of, you know, stopping a lot of the quote-unquote standard playstyles in the Terran versus Zerg matchup. He figured out that Serral is very good against the, you know, very normal, straightforward approach. However, in these games so far, in the last couple that we have seen, right, Gumiho has mixed it up. He's played a little bit oddly, and all of a sudden Serral doesn't seem to know precisely what the correct response is. Really cool play there. That's really like the sign of a champion right there, right? When you know that you're up against an opponent that you may not know as well. You could have potentially, if you were Gumiho in this series, right, you could have potentially decided what kind of playstyle you want to go for before the series even began, right? You may have very well decided, okay, I'm going to play standard Hellion into Banshee into mech in game number 3, 4, and 5, and 6 if they, you know, are applicable. And in the first couple, I'm going to be playing bio. But no, he's adjusting on the fly, judging by what his opponent is capable of as well. So I wonder exactly what Gumiho has got in store for us in this match as well, because it should be a lot of fun. Now, we are on a map called God's Garden. There's fruit. Okay, look at this. There's grapes. There's a lemonade stand as well if you if you want lemonade. I mean, look at it. It's fresh. It's very nice. There's some more grapes right here floating off in the distance. We got some bananas. Do we have any others? No, there's more. Oh yeah, we do have watermelon as well. Very good. There's all kinds of different fruit here, which I gotta say I really do like. Now, this map is called God's Gardens, but apparently if you're trying to publish a map in StarCraft 2, you're not gonna be able to call it anything along the lines of God. So if you're looking for this map in the arcade or in the custom map generator in StarCraft 2, you gotta look for the map name Dog's Garden. So not God's Garden, but Dog's Garden, and this one will actually show up. Quite funny in that regard. Anyway, if this map does indeed make it to the final stages of the ladder, I'm pretty sure that, sadly, Blizzard does not quite want the fruit on here. I mean, the fruit are fine, but I don't think they're gonna make it if this map gets to the ladder version of the game, right? I don't think the fruit is gonna get that far, and it's probably also not gonna be God's Garden anymore. But still, this map does seem pretty similar, and or pretty awesome, and I gotta say, I actually really do like the way that this is being approached so far. Now, here's a little bit of interesting shenanigans once again. I saw that Gumiho was producing that reactor on the production tab. He went for the factory as well. And while apparently he is going to make the switch here, there are a lot of Marines here in production. And this is cool, right? Once again, he's analyzed the way that Serral scouts. He's figured out the way that Serral scouts. And he's making Marines while still... Wait, no? Interesting. I love this. So he's making Marines. He's making it look to his opponent like he's making Marines, but then he's switching into factory units here instead. Now, there's also indeed a starport now producing a medevac, but there's also a tech lab going down. So Gumiho is once again switching it up. Now, there is going to be this overlord here. Did fly straight into that widow mine. Actually, a little bit sloppy there by Serral. He knew that that one was located at that point in the game. He's going to be able to pick up this this overlord scout as well, but this is going to get very odd very quickly. I mean, right now there's going to be a liberator on the production tab as well. And once again, we see Gumiho mixing it up. I think that he may be able to move across the map here with this widow mine, as well as then, of course, these Marines with it as well. So there's 5 Marines in total. One apparently was left behind in that medevac. There's going to be 5 Marines here in total. They're going to be able to drop off in one base. Then I think this Liberator is going to potentially be able to harass another one as well. And then the Hellions can potentially deal some damage too. So right now, right, he's making it look to his opponent like this is just going to be a very standard, straightforward, bio-based composition. But it's really not. There are going to all of a sudden be Hellions out here on the map as well. And there's also actually an armory in production, so that means that Gumiho is going to be capable of morphing these units into Hellbats as well. Now, this may very well get scouted, although so far I think that the Zerg player... Oh no, this one actually just ran on a creep, never mind. But I think that so far the Zerg player doesn't really know exactly what to make of this. This is kind of odd. I love it. Very cool. So indeed, the medevac with the Marines as well as the Widowmine is currently making their way towards that third base location. Liberator here is moving on the left-hand side of the map. Hellions are right now waiting for that armory to finish up, and I think they're going to be morphing into Hellbats very shortly. And this is such an annoying little move here that Serral will have to deal with, right? And this is once again something unorthodox. Oh no, that queen is not caught in the perfect angle there, so these drones will be forced to run away. At the same time, Widowmine was dropped off here. It did end up killing a couple of kills, or a couple of units there as well. And now the Hellbats are moving into that natural mineral line. I love the way that Gumiho is approaching this. Delaying the third base, and he's also following it up even with a Banshee with Cloak now. Mixing it up in every single one of these games, throwing his opponent off and trying to see if he can potentially deal some damage here as well. Now, eventually, the Spore Crawler dealt with it. Apparently, these Hellbats were dealt with as well, and even though this is something very uncommon, I gotta hand it to the Zerg player here as well. Only 5 workers ended up dying, plus he's still got a very solid economy left over, and a lot of queens too, and he's gonna start the droning once again. Very nicely played here by Serral, but I love the way that Gumiho is approaching this. Now, once again, he has decided that he doesn't want to play bio anymore in the series. He's got to switch into that mech-based composition instead. But I love the story, right, that he's trying to sell to his opponent. Although I think that that Serral is going to be able to push ahead here in just a second. I mean, already he's got a solid amount of economy, and he's going to be capable of building up more and more of it. I mean, he will have to deal with these Hellions once again, and he's got to try and not lose any additional workers here. But so far, very impressed with the way that Serral is approaching this as well. Even though he knows that his opponent is trying to mess with his mind, he's making the best of the scenario. Now, Cloak Banshee is out. There is indeed going to be a Spore Crawler available, and I think that these Banelink connections will be forced to be spot on, because a lot of these units are once again moving onwards. Hellions are making their way towards the mineral line. Marines are forced to split up as well. Banshees are trying to deal some damage here too. No transfuses going down just yet until the nick of time there. And once again, great defense there by the Zerg player. Although, just here in the nick of time, he may end up losing a couple more workers there that he was not quite hoping to lose here earlier on into this match. But still, Gumiho, the latest third base for this for a little while. And so far, I mean, he's capable of switching into this mech-based composition. But Serral has been able to hold on quite a bit nicer than he has in the previous games thus far. 10 workers killed in total, that's manageable. That's totally manageable. Gumiho once again trying to move in though, and he's still gonna continue this harassment, right? Recognizing that harass is probably the way that he's gonna win, and he's once again gonna move into the main as well right now with Hellbats. These queens, however, are gonna be able to deal with that Banshee just fine. They're gonna be able to deal with that one just fine. And on top of that, the creep spread is really far out already, right? While Serral is forced to deal with all of these different kinds of units as well, he's doing a great job at spreading all of the creep. And right now, that queen going after the medevac, dealing a heck of a lot of damage to it already. That means that this gets shut down perfectly as well, and this drop will not deal any damage. Very solid play here by Serral, but the supply counts aren't lying, right? This is something that he's focusing a lot of his efforts on. It does mean that he's slipping up in macro here and there. Gumiho, he's not doing so. Gumiho is, you know, very comfortable playing a style that is very harassment heavy while still being macroing up like an absolute champ. And Gumiho also actually got up to 70 workers right now, securing himself that 4th command center. Muscular Augments has just finished up, which is the Hydralisk upgrade. Hydras are now in production as well. Are there any upgrades out right now for the Zerg player? Really not a whole lot just yet. Interestingly enough, of course, Gumiho only got 1 armory, so he's not going to be able to double up those upgrades. So that means that the longer this game goes, you know, it's not going to be quite as powerful of an army as we saw in the previous games. Upgrades really do make a massive amount of difference. Now, Cloak Banshees trying to get rid of some of the creep spread. Queens, however, immediately there, ready to replace some of those lost tumors as well. Zerglings setting up for a potential run by, although there's really no bases taken on this side of the map just yet. Hey, look at that. We got some blueberries as well. That's awesome. But once again, while the Siege Tanks and the Thors and the Hellions and Hellbats are moving across the map, the Zerglings are going to try and see if they can deal some damage as well. And currently, the front door is wide open. While Zerg, of course, needs to deal with this, the front door is wide open and a lot of units will end up falling here. This is a great run by here by Serral, essentially making this push from Gumiho a lot more commitment, right? Does he want to go back, or does he want to try and see if he can potentially finish off the Zerg at this point in the game? Reinforcing units, however, dealing with that run by reasonably well. 9 SCVs going down there in total. And Gumiho is trying to see if he can potentially clean all of this up. Now, he doesn't really have the money right now to scan either. So these tumors here will be available for just a little while longer. Will indeed decide to clean it up there after just a couple of seconds. But still, this is going to be a scary push, though. There are so many Terran units here available. Great concave, however, by Serral, spreading out his Hydras and Queens brilliantly, using transfuses left and right to keep his units alive for a little while longer. And Serral cleans it up. What a beautiful hold there. That could have gone either way. That was a very tough thing to hold, and he even gets this around right there on that reinforcing Thor as well, making sure that he's going to be capable of cleaning this army up completely. Now, I would actually love to see him knock down these rocks. I think these rocks are going to make it quite a bit easier to open up quite a few new attack paths, right? If you, once again, have to fight on this angle, in this choke, I think that if you have these back rocks opened up, that makes it significantly easier. But once again, this Banshee is going to try and see if it can potentially do more and more damage. Gumiho, though, losing a huge chunk of his supply there. Beautiful game here so far by the Zerg player in red. Even though he's forced to adjust here on the fly, he's done so much more effectively than he had in the games previously. Now, this is a little odd. Luckily, however, the Banshee is here to push these workers back to mining. That almost was a moment where it wasn't even worth anymore to help the Zerg out there, because a whole lot of idle workers for the remainder of that base being up is probably going to be more beneficial than actually trying to shoot down some of these drones as well. But still, Zerglings once again trying to see if they can get an angle, and I mean the Zerglings are indeed trying to see if they can do any damage whatsoever. Now, so far, Gumiho knows that this is a potential thing that he needs to deal with, and at the same time, Locusts are moving onwards here as well. They're trying to see if they can close up some of these siege tanks. Not quite going to be able to do so effectively just yet. Once again, only half of the Locusts got activated, so he's going to be capable of sending several waves of the units forward at a time. But Gumiho, once again, has got a very menacing army. Another base is trying to get secured right now as well by Gumiho, although this is one that's a little tricky here to defend. The planetary fortress should hopefully make that just a little bit easier. And once again, he's going to go through this choke. Now, there are so many swarmos here, and the slower this engagement is here for the Terran player, the harder this is going to be to try and defend it as well. I mean, or rather, the harder it's going to be to push into this as well. I mean, how are you going to try and fight this, right? If all of your Locusts end up dying here as a Zerg, that's going to be game over for sure. But he's sending them out in smaller waves instead. I really like this move. Using that splash damage of the siege tanks to his advantage as well. And once again, the Zerg is trying to clean all of this up, doing a magnificent job of that exact thing so far. Although there are still a lot of units remaining, the Locusts are once again available, and they're going to be able to pick up every single last of these units with relative ease. Now, great pickup there on that medevac, keeping that one alive for just a little while longer. Planetary Fortress has finished up, however, in the top right corner of the map, and Gumiho will be able to mine for a little while more. Serral actually trying to secure the same base here. This is kind of interesting. I mean, this is essentially on the same vertical axis on this map here as the base of the Terran player. Now, one of the Thors actually running very low, but picked up there in just the nick of time. Gotta be careful though, don't really lose all of these Hellions here for free either. While the Hellions aren't a gas unit and usually you don't quite want to max out on them, they're gonna be very important at this point in the game just because they're soaking up a lot of these Locust kills as well. At this point though, Serral playing very Swarmos heavy. I wonder how this is gonna turn out. Hellions are going to actually try and move around here, potentially see if they can deal a little bit of damage here on the left-hand side of the map as well. Creep only just now moving off into that direction. But finally, we see the switch here from Serral, and he's going up towards the Hive. I think that he's looking to try and see if he can potentially go for some Vipers as well. Maybe a switch towards Brute Lords and Ultras will be on the production tab here in just a couple of minutes. Hellions, however, get picked up with relative ease, and they are not quite going to be capable of dealing the damage that they were looking for. Medevac now also once again trying to move in, and so far actually really impressive defense here though by the Zerg player. I mean, how many workers have fallen here in total? It's 16 killed here by Gumiho, whereas Serral killed 10 in total, so really the differences are very, very minor. Double spine crawlers at each and every one of these bases will be able to just simply shut down these Hellion drops just fine. I mean, sure, a couple of drones may end up dying once again, but at this point both players have got the economy to replace workers with relative ease. At the same time, Locusts are trying to move forward right now as well to that base in the top right hand corner. Of course, committing to this path here is kind of a risky thing for the Zerg player, because if you lose all of your Swarmos, that is going to be game over as well, so he probably had to fly them in from quite a long angle. But Serral, I mean, he's trying to maneuver around the map, trying to see if he can find that angle, but he's not quite catching it just yet. And I think that in late game scenarios, in particular with +3 weapons finishing up, that's going to be very tough here for the Zerg player to hold. I mean, look at this composition, right? Terran has got a lot of terrifying units, but here we go. Siege tanks are sieged up. Hellions are trying to connect with as many of these Locusts as they possibly can. Hydras dealing damage from a bit of a distance as well, but is there going to be enough Zerg here to clean the remainder of these units up? Once again, those siege tanks taking down a lot of these Locusts, but not without losing a few of their brothers as well. Zerglings apparently did go for a run by here into that third base location here of the Terran player, and a couple of SCVs once more ended up dying. But more importantly, I think that Serral just bought himself a lot of time. He's bought himself a lot of time, potentially go up to some Hive tier units as well, maybe get some +3 upgrades here very shortly too. I mean, he's already at +2, +2, +1 here from melee units. So I think that going up to 3-3 is going to be a great move, but this high ground is definitely currently occupied here by the Terran player in blue. Look at that. That's not going to be an angle you can easily fight into if you are the Zerg player, and it looks like he's going to be forced to run at least a couple of Zerglings across the map to see if he can close out this fight here in a bit of a different way. I mean, this base is going to be a tough one to fight into. Very, very tough one. The Vikings here actually dealing a lot of damage to these Locusts. Siege tanks are going to be capable of once again dealing a whole lot of friendly fire. However, the Zerglings are currently make their way into the natural, but they are greeted with Hellions. Beautifully positioned right there by Gumiho, showing what he's made of, and at the exact same time, he's moving once again just a tiny little bit further just a little bit further into this map. Once again though, siege tanks in the back are indeed gonna be dealing a lot of damage. Weakened siege tanks are now picked up in those dropships, right? Trying to see if they can deal the damage here as well that they were made for. Now while sieged up, they can no longer be dropped down. And it does look that the siege tanks will end up falling there to a lot of the Zerglings, Hydras, and Banelings, and Locust as well. One of these Swarmos apparently does have a bit of a death wish. Once again though, great pickup, Micro, but I think that Serral has managed to, you know, at least... Has he though? I wonder. I was gonna say, like, I think he has been able to secure this position reasonably well once again, but this is a tricky one. Terran wants to take control of this area because with the creep going down once again, a couple of minutes from now, it will be very difficult to make a move similar to the one that he's going for right now. He's actually trying to secure this position very, very nicely, and I think that with enough Vikings in the air, right, he's producing a lot of them, he may very well be able to take this map very easily if he manages to take control of this once again. But once more, the Locusts are flying through the sky, providing so much value here for the Zerg player. And indeed, Medevacs are going to pick up every single last of these units, and Zerg will be able to live for just a little while longer. Now, interestingly enough, I think by the time that the Terran will actually be able to secure this area, the bases here will already be mined out. So really, Terran doesn't, you know... He knows that the value of getting this position is running out shortly as well. At the same time, though, Hellions are trying to make their way into this base here on the left-hand side of the map, although there's a lot of Hydralisks here ready to take this one out as well. Very close game here so far, although judging by that supply count, right, I gotta say, Serral seems like he is in a firm, dominant position here, really not missing a beat. I really do like this move, though. Gonna be capable of dealing quite a bit of damage here with these siege tanks. Look at the amount of damage that they deal in a short amount of time. At the same time, though, Locust once again flying forward. No planetary fortress here on this part of the map either. Hydras are now trying to move across the map here at the exact same time as everything else. Don't know if that is going to be the smart move. Siege tanks, however, dropped off inside of this base once again, and it does look like Gumiho managed to deflect this aggression for a little while longer, but this base did indeed go down all the way to red amounts of HP, so it will go down with just a little bit more aggression here, probably in a minute or two, once the Terran player feels comfortable to make a move towards that base once again. Now, these players are really very closely matched. I mean, Serral is playing his heart out here, really not missing a beat. Going to Adrenal Glands upgrade right now, as well as +3 attacks. That's a very important one. +3 missile is already done. +2 melee weapons as well here for the Zerg player. But here we go. Massive push coming in, trying to push up to that high ground. Not usually something you want to do as a Zerg player, but he's smelling blood. He knows that he's ahead in the supply counts at this point in the game. Using a lot of these Locusts once again to soak up some of that friendly splash damage, making sure that the siege tanks kill each other. Thor just does barely in the nick of time, gets picked up there, but once more, Gumiho manages to hold on to this base for just a little while longer. And I think that the Terran player may very well, or rather the Zerg player may very well just simply try and bring all of these reinforcing units back into this engagement as well and do another push. I would love to see another push up this ramp after bringing these Hydralisks back home as well, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Trying to move forward here as well with a couple of these Hydras though, making sure that he takes control of whatever is going on here on the top left-hand side of the map. Hellions now also trying to see if they can potentially get an angle towards the base here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map. A Thor drop going down at this exact same moment while the Hydras are trying to pick this up. Hydras do get shot down, but the Thor is dealing a magnificent amount of damage. I mean, that is a fully upgraded Thor at this point in the game, or actually it's a +3 attack, but at the same time, Zerglings and the Locust and all of the Banelings and Hydras are once again making a move for it, and Terran knows that he needs to evacuate that. The Thor, however, killed a base all by itself as well, and while the Zerg was putting all so much effort here on trying to kill a single base, a Thor did the exact same thing on the opposite side of the map in just a matter of seconds. Siege tanks now also in production, or rather in position here, forcing the cancel on that hatchery once more. And now that there are Hellions and Hellbats here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, I wonder whether or not Serral is going to be able to start mining from that base anytime soon. I mean, so far, Gumiho is really abusing the terrain layout on this map absolutely gorgeously, securing himself bases left and right. And while Zerg is trying to go for these run-bys every single time he tries to do so, other than the initial run-by into the natural expansion, there really hasn't been a whole lot of value in this whatsoever. Serral has been trying to do the run buys, he's been trying to do the damage, but Gumiho, while he was significantly behind earlier, he's getting into a position where he's once again crawling himself back into this match. Now this is an opportunity right here. Serral does have the opportunity to do a lot of damage as there are currently no defenses, nor is there a planetary fortress here on this base secured right next to the one that was previously into the natural. Now Zerg is currently posturing here on the right hand side of the map, and the Zerglings are indeed making a move. This is the move that Zerg was looking here for a little while. These are very well upgraded Zerglings. They got adrenal glands. They're going to be able to eat through all of these SCVs in just a matter of seconds. A couple of them do end up dying there, but not without also taking 14 SCVs with them. And actually the command center is running awfully low. It's currently burning while the Zerg was indeed forced to deal with a siege tank drop here as well. At this point, siege tanks are just gonna be absolutely shredded by these fully upgraded Zerglings now that they've got +3 attack as well as +3 armor. Vipers now also on the production tab. I don't think there are any Ultralisk out just yet, but the chitinous plating research has finished up. So as soon as the Thors and the siege tanks die, I think that Serral is planning to make a switch into these Ultralisks, because of course Ultras are very great at essentially dealing with everything on the ground that is not called a siege tank or a Thor. Interestingly enough, the bases are actually starting to run very, very low. This is really one of the last mining bases here for Gumiho, and the base in the bottom left-hand side of the map right now for the Zerg is going to be crucial too. I mean, this one is not going to have a whole lot of mining left over at it anymore. Great move here by Gumiho, going after this base right from the get-go. Just simply target firing it down, not sieging up these tanks whatsoever, because that means that he can pick them up to start fighting once again a little while later. Trying to abuse the low ground right there as well is Gumiho, trying to see if he can potentially kill that base from the Zerg once again. Now this is really going to be the last mining base here for the Zerg in just a second, and Gumiho only really has one mining base himself here as well. Banks quite heavily in favor though of Serral, as is the supply count. So if you can manage to cost efficiently deal with the rest of the Terran army here, I think that Serral still has a very good chance at dealing the damage. And of course, he still has got all of these Swarmhosts alive as well. The Swarmhosts are very important. A lot of them have indeed fallen. Look at that, 401 Zerglings died in this game so far. Pretty insane when you think about it. But really, look at the total supply or the total cost of all of these units. Pretty back and forth between both of these players. And the efficiency here is definitely not in either player's favor. A lot of Hellions committed right now. This is a ballsy move from Gumiho. He knows that this base in the bottom left-hand corner of the map will be one of the last mining bases here, but at the same time, he may very well be sacrificing every single last of these Hellions, but 28 workers killed is definitely going to be the value that he is looking for. Now, the Hellions are not quite going to be able to get him out of there. That's gonna be a bit of a shame. At the same time though, Serral knows that this was a big commitment there by the Terran player. Only 39 workers remaining here though for the Zerg player. He's once again forced to produce some drones as well. But really, how do you want to fight this if you are the Zerg at this point in the game? Do you really not want to knock down these rocks and potentially go for some more run-bys? This is gonna get crazy pretty fast, because all of these bases are indeed scouted by either of these players, trying to keep track of exactly what is going on. Now, drones will continue to start mining here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, and really there's not a whole lot of mining going on here anymore for the Terran player at all. Trying to make the most of this scenario. Now, one little cheeky Zergling is currently burrowed underneath that command center, and Gumiho has yet to notice at this point in the game. Trying to see, once again, if he can deal with all of these Zerg units. Vipers, however, are yanking the siege tanks up towards that high ground, picking up these units very effectively, because really all the Zerg lost there was a couple of Hydras, some Banelings, as well as a whole lot of Locusts. At the same time, Zerglings are making their way on the right-hand side of the map, picking up a lot of these SCVs, and I think that Serral may have very well been able to do it, although not just yet. There are still Thors out. There are still siege tanks out. They are extremely cost-efficient. Ultralisk now also on the production tab. However, the Zerglings are absolutely shredding through every single last of these buildings here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, and Gumiho is forced to GG out in a very epic conclusion of this best of 7 series, where Serral obtains the victory in a 4-2 fashion. What an awesome set of games. That was really, really, really cool. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, you know what to do. Make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I'll see you in the next one.